Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 383 for the 21st of February 2016. Richard Saunders here with you from a secret location. A secret location doing some field work. That's why my voice in this episode is going to sound a little bit different. It's because, well, I'm on location. Yes, I know it sounds very secretive, but just roll with me on this one. Coming up on this week's show, we're going to be reporting on the Catalyst fiasco. Now, Catalyst is the ABC TV, that's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, TV's flagship science show. It's been going for many years, and in fact, Dr. Paul Willis, who you hear frequently from the Royal Institution of Australia, was a long-time reporter on Catalyst. Unfortunately, last week, Catalyst ran an episode called Why Fried? Which sadly is more or less a scaremongering exercise into the dangers, or the so-called dangers, or the trumped-up dangers of cell phones, Wi-Fi, this sort of thing. The episode has been roundly condemned by viewers and experts alike. We're going to be getting to that story pretty soon at the top of the show. Also on the show, after that, it's a radio clip, snip, from the BBC featuring Michael Marshall, our good friend Michael Marshall from the Good Thinking Society and the Merseyside Skeptics. Now, he was interviewed on BBC Merseyside about homeopathy together with a GP who is also a practicing homeopath. And thanks to Michael Marshall for alerting me to this little clip. I think you'll enjoy it. Then to round off the show, it's Evidence Please with Jo Alabaster. Jo's going to be reading a report about the North Coast region of New South Wales, where our good friend Heidi Robertson, the raw skeptic from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group, is based. And in fact, the story does even quote her. Well, the crux of the story is looking at why parents are suspicious of vaccinations. And in that part of the world, it's a very important issue. Thanks to all those people who read my little interview on the Huffington Post Australia, and I'll link to that in the show notes. It was, well, my tips and advice for any budding podcaster out there. Take it or leave it. Things that sort of worked for me, more or less, in the Skeptic Zone. Now, thanks to all those people who chip into the Skeptic Zone via PayPal. You can do that at skepticzone.tv. A lot of people chip in 99 cents a week, but it all helps. It really does. It covers the basic costs of putting the show out, and I hope you enjoy it. But now it's time for me to run to the secret location cupboard, open it up, find some rice crackers, munch those. While I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Earlier last week, ABC TV's Catalyst, their flagship science show, aired a program called Why Fried? All about the supposed dangers of Wi-Fi radiation, cell phone radiation affecting the brain. Here is a short clip used at the beginning of the report.
You can't see it or hear it, but Wi-Fi blankets our homes, our cities, and our schools.
Children today are growing up in a sea of radio frequency microwave radiation that did not exist 5 years ago.
Our safety agencies dispute that wireless devices like mobile phones cause harm.
I don't think it's good enough to say at the moment that mobile phone use does cause cancer.
Cell phones emit pulsed radiation.
But some of the world's leading scientists and industry insiders are breaking ranks to warn us of the risks.
There is an association between heavy mobile phone use and brain tumours.
I've been in the technology industry all my career, and I've seen the tremendous benefits that technology can provide. My concern is nobody can say that it's safe.
Do mobile phones cause brain cancer? And is Wi-Fi making us sick? In this episode, I investigate the latest research and advice about the safety of our modern wireless devices.
Dramatic music, scaremongering, we might say. It's the flavour of the whole show, the whole report. Now, I will add the link to the video and the transcript of the entire report for you to peruse, if you so desire. Needless to say, this report has come in for a huge amount of criticism. I refer to reports such as the one by Signa Dean, writing for the SBS website. Expert, audience, slam ABC's Catalyst report on Wi-Fi danger. Science and health experts are slamming the latest episode of ABC's Catalyst on the potential health dangers of wireless devices, calling it scaremongering and incorrect. Very good and thorough report by Signa Dean, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Other outlets chiming in with criticism include the Sydney Morning Herald, The Conversation, and the Australian Skeptics. Now, later on, I'll read the Bent Spoon nomination for Catalyst by Australian Skeptics. But right now, what I'm going to do is run a report from our good friends at the Royal Institution of Australia. And immediately following that report, I'll read out the Bent Spoon nomination from Australian Skeptics. Now, those wonderful people at the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au, have a new initiative. A new initiative. Can you say that? Yes, I suppose you can. Look out, it's Australia's Science Channel. Go to www.riaus.tv. Now, there's a host of videos up there already, but the one we're playing you today is in line with our current story about the Catalyst Wi-Fi program. In response to the ABC Catalyst airing Why Fried, RiAus spoke to Professor Rodney Croft from the University of Wollongong, who is an expert on electromagnetic effects and human health, to seek the truth about this myth. And now from the Royal Institution of Australia, it's Ben and Casey.
So we're pretty sick seeing our feeds spam today about the dangers of Wi-Fi.
Yeah, this week's episode of Catalyst was the one to launch a million eye rolls around our office, when in fact this issue breaks down pretty simply.
Yeah, at its core, there's actually no evidence which shows any link between Wi-Fi and mobile phones and serious ill effects on our health.
There's really no evidence at all that there's a link between Wi-Fi use and health. There's been a lot of research conducted, but it's a very low power level and we just can't find any link with health. In general, we've got very flat rates of brain cancers, for instance, so we do see little changes, but they're not actually related to mobile phones. What we find, for instance, with rats is that they change their eating behaviour very slightly. They become a little bit less hungry. So that's the threshold that we refer to as a health effect. Now, in terms of Wi-Fi, what we're talking about is a level about 5,000 to 50,000 times lower than that. So extremely, extremely small levels that we'd find very hard to actually detect in terms of a biological change. Radiation like this changes temperature, and that's how it can have an influence at very high levels, but at the kind of level we get from a Wi-Fi, for instance, we'd find it very hard to actually see any temperature change in the body at all, and our body's very used to dealing with quite large temperature changes.
And any claims that kids are more susceptible than adults? Well, we just can't prove that.
There are slight changes in how small people versus larger people absorb the energy from Wi-Fi or mobile phones, but these don't correspond to anything to do with health. So you can get slightly larger exposures, but on the other hand, a smaller person will also give off more heat and produce a compensatory effect that means the net result is no change. So an adult and a child, as far as science has been able to determine, are identical in terms of the effect of radiation from mobile phones and Wi-Fi.
There's just no evidence that making a call on your mobile phone or hooking up to your Wi-Fi will mean that you get cancer.
No, this whole episode was just about playing up to the fears of your parents.
Some people expect science to be able to give us a 100% secure answer that something is safe, and they like to see that before they're willing to have society use a product, a food, an emission, whatever it may be. But science can't do that. Science can never, ever show that something is 100% safe. Doesn't matter if it's water, orange juice, Wi-Fi or a mobile phone, it just can't show that. So really it's a matter of looking to try to find harm. And that's what the research has really been doing. There's been a huge amount of research out there trying to find harm, and at the moment we can't find any.
You can never be 100% sure about things like this. It's those fuzzy edges which people exploit with fear-mongering.
The episode ended with the guest asking, do we really want to see proof?
Yes! Yes, we do!
We really want to see proof. We really want to see evidence. That's how we want to make our decisions. And I find it a bit irresponsible to end the entire episode this way. And I'm kind of just as disappointed in the journalism as I am in the standards of science that we saw. I think we should all expect more from a report on Catalyst.
Bent Spoon nomination for ABC Catalyst by Tim Mendon, published on the Australian Skeptics website at www.skeptics.com.au, February 19th, 2016. ABC TV's science program Catalyst and one of its chief science reporters, Dr. Marianne Damasi, have been nominated for the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award. A report by Dr. Marianne Damasi titled Why Fried, and broadcast on February 16, looked at the supposed health dangers of Wi-Fi connections for smartphones, laptops, tablets, etc. The program and Dr. Damasi have been criticised before for promoting unsubstantiated scientific evidence of dangerous products. In 2014, Dr. Damasi and Catalyst presented a case against statins in cholesterol control. The program was criticised for using experts with vested interests in promoting alternative medicine to put the anti-statin case, and pitching the proponents of established evidence-based medicine into a minor role. This time, the same process has been used to alert people to the dangers of sticking smartphones to their ears. It uses 6 experts, at least one without any attribution, to put the case for the supposed dangers, and only one scientist who pointed to the lack of any scientific evidence that supports the danger claims. Even that science was encouraged to state that science was never 100% sure of something, which in the program's point of view equated to, quote, "You can't therefore say it's 100% safe and therefore it must be dangerous," end quote. In response to the criticism, Catalyst responded on its Facebook page that, quote, "The program and its producers recognise there's a debate, understand that the science is not settled, and that it is an issue of public concern." That's why the Catalyst program spoke to those who consider the increased risk to be significant and concerning, and to others who do not consider it to be significant, including extensive quotes from a spokesman for the ARPANSA and the industry body AMTA. The program also included the views of a prominent brain surgeon, Charlie Teo, and prominent cancer expert, Professor Bruce Armstrong. It is also important to note that at least 2 of the current critics of the program, Drs. Bernard Stewart and Simon Chapman, were invited to participate in the program but declined. Had they agreed to be interviewed, their views would have been included as well." End quote. Perhaps because of the claim that, quote, "the science is not settled," end quote, the Catalyst story allowed many unsubstantiated statements that ignored scientific evidence to be made, and some of those statements were wrong. Dr. Sarah Lauren of the University of Wollongong, a researcher at the NHRMC's Centre for Research Excellence in Electromagnetic Energy, as well as a member of the WHO Environmental Health Criterion Evaluation Committee on Radio Frequency Fields, said that, quote, "many claims were made without providing any substantiated science to support what was essentially individual and selective opinions that were used to paint an incorrect picture of the current state of knowledge. Indeed, there is currently no scientific evidence that exposure to low-level radio frequency, such as emitted by mobile phones and Wi-Fi, has an impact on health." By not providing a balanced view on the science, Catalyst has left viewers with misleading messages regarding the use of such devices, which may serve to perpetuate fear related to a health risk that currently does not exist. End quote. Dr. Deidre Davis, an American epidemiologist and writer who was featured prominently in the program, countered the lack of scientific evidence for brain damage from Wi-Fi radiation by saying it was too early to see any rise in brain cancer caused by mobile phones or Wi-Fi, and argued that brain cancers after the Japanese atomic bombs did not appear for 40 years. Quote, "That's simply incorrect," end quote, said Dr. Simon Chapman, Emeritus Professor in Public Health at the University of Sydney. He cited a study published by the American Cancer Society that reported on central nervous system cancers, including brain cancers, in those exposed to atomic bomb radiation in Japan, which found that more than 58% of those studied were diagnosed in the first 40 years, and some much earlier. Quote, "There is no evidence of any increase in the rate per 100,000 population of brain cancer in any age group in Australia from 1982 to the present, other than for the very oldest age group, where the increase started well before mobile phones were introduced in Australia, and so cannot be explained by mobile phones. All cancers in Australia are notifiable, and over 85% of brain cancer is historically verified. It's just not a doctor's opinion," end quote. Dr. Darren Saunders is a cancer biologist at the University of New South Wales and is a visiting fellow at the Kinghorn Cancer Centre, Garvan Institute. He said that there were key flaws in the argument made in the program that stood out significantly. One was the lack of any demonstrable increase in brain cancer incidence over time. Quote, "We have been exposed to the same kind of non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation long before mobile phones and Wi-Fi became commonplace," end quote. He added that a second flaw was the absence of a plausible biological mechanism for how this kind of radiation can cause cancer. Quote, "There were very poor analogues made with microwave ovens and smoking, which are purely emotive and not based on actual science. Comparing a microwave to a mobile phone is like comparing a Saturn V rocket to your lawnmower," end quote. For a supposed scientific program, one sequence in particular was indicative of poor scientific support for the radiation claims. Dr. Davis used illustrations to explain the supposed extent of radiation damage to the brain, but these were obviously photo library shots of a man and a little girl with colours superimposed on them. The program said this showed thermal imagery of radiation seeping into the brain, but this imagery could have easily been applied to any object. It was not generated by those particular subjects. Nonetheless, Dr. Damazi seemed impressed by the colours. The Bent Spoon nomination says, quote, "For again presenting a biased, sensationalist story on a scientific topic, in this case non-ionizing radiation and the use of Wi-Fi media. The program had 6 scaremongering experts ranged against one scientist, saying that there wasn't any scientific evidence that harm was being caused. It confused the proper and normal scientific restraint of saying we can't be absolutely sure of something with admitting that something is dangerous. Poor science, bad journalism, overly alarmist, and even the title of the story, Why Fried, was sensationalised. Move over, Daily Mail. Here comes Catalyst. And that was by Tim Mendham, as reported at www.skeptics.com.au. So there you are, a little roundup of this week's hot topic, Why Fried, from the Catalyst program. And I think one of the reasons so many people are so disappointed is because that, basically, we simply expect better from the ABC and the Catalyst program. For the links mentioned, visit www.skepticzone.tv. And it's worth mentioning that the patched people, PATCH''D, who are marketing a little device you put on your cell phone to protect you from the evil radiation, jumped in early when they saw the Catalyst program was coming out. And if you go to their Facebook page, you'll see, certain comments by a certain podcaster.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
And now here's a clip from the Merseyside Skeptics. Well, I should say it's from BBC Merseyside. They interviewed Michael Marshall from the Merseyside Skeptics and the Good Thinking Society, as well as Dr. Hugh Nielsen, a medical doctor who also practices homeopathy. Don't forget to visit goodthinkingsociety.org or merseysideskeptics.org.uk for more information about Michael Marshall and the groups he's involved with. Now, have a close listen to the reasoning that Dr. Hugh Nielsen presents in this interview.
Change of tack here. Health bosses in Liverpool and Wirral are considering stopping spending money on homeopathy. Currently, Wirral spend about £31,000 on it, Liverpool roughly the same. Totally, in terms of the NHS budget, it amounts to 0.004% of the entire budget, but some people think we shouldn't even be spending that, not least a group called the Merseyside Skeptics, and we'll hear from Mike Marshall from them in a moment. But first, Dr. Hugh Nielsen. Now, he's a GP in Liverpool, and as well as using conventional medicine, he practices homeopathy 1 day a week at a clinic in Old Swan. He told me there's room for both in the NHS.
Yeah, I use both. You know, most of my professional life is spent using conventional medicine. Probably 80%. Most of the time, 4 days a week, I'm a GP, and the 1 day a week on a Monday, I practice homeopathy. And I practice a bit of homeopathy in my normal, everyday GP work.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask you why you believe homeopathy has a place in the NHS?
Well, because I think it's been around for 200 years, and I think there's a reasonable amount of evidence that shows that it works. And it's, in my experience, for certain conditions, it works very well. It's very safe and it's got very few side effects and it can be very effective. The big controversy is that we don't know how it works, and some of the remedies that we use are so dilute that there is none of the original substance present.
Yeah, so it's just water, is it?
It's just water in the chemical sense, but it's not just water in the physical sense. I mean, there have been quite a few studies looking at the properties of these ultra-dilute solutions, that we call them, and they have different physical properties from pure water.
But it's chemically the same as water. I mean, what's the difference between a chemical analysis and, as you're saying, a physical analysis? Surely the chemistry is the physical, isn't it?
No, the chemistry is the actual molecules that are there or are not there. The physical things is the actual properties. There is some sort of energy in this remedy
that
has an effect on cells and on human bodies and on animals.
When you talk about energy there, that's the kind of thing that people who maybe practice Reiki say, isn't it? I mean, you might as well lay on hands in that sense.
No, it's a completely different system from Reiki. I don't know much about Reiki at all. I'm just...
But they talk about energy, don't they?
Yes, they do talk about energy, but I can't explain how it works. But I'm just saying that there is evidence that these ultra-dilute solutions have some sort of effect.
Isn't it just placebo, then? If there isn't any medical or chemistry involved, isn't it just placebo? And I'm not saying that that's not effective, because placebo is very powerful sometimes, but you might as well give them a sugar pill.
Well, I mean, there's been over 100 trials in homeopathy. There have been lots of trials, and the balance shows that it is more than placebo.
And do you think, though, I mean, you devote one day of your NHS work or one day of your working week to this. Clearly that's a day when perhaps you could be applying conventional medicine on the NHS to people.
I could, but there's over 250 excellent GPs in Liverpool doing that, and there's only me practicing homeopathy. And as I said, I see people that have tried everything in conventional medicine, and it hasn't worked.
Right.
So I think, from that point of view, it's a valuable service. And I'm not... One might argue, well, the conventional medicine that they've got isn't up to scratch. That is not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The GPs in Liverpool and Wirral are, on the whole, excellent. And they're not sending me patients that they've missed something, they haven't diagnosed something, or they haven't tried the right treatment.
Yeah.
Believe me, every single patient that I see in either St. Catherine's or Old Swan has had an excellent workup from the conventional point of view. And sometimes it just doesn't work.
So
that's where I think homeopathy comes in.
And in a way you've preempted my next question, which was that the NHS spends £4 million a year on homeopathy, and there are those who say that, when NICE are withholding expensive treatments for cancer that do work because of financial restrictions, we shouldn't be spending a penny on this stuff.
Well, I would disagree that it doesn't work, and, £4 million, and in addition, that's the whole of the NHS in the UK. Liverpool spends £29,000 a year, which is 0.004% of their budget. It's a drop in the ocean. It is a tiny amount in the NHS drug budget. I don't know what it is, but it's a hell of a lot more than 4 million.
Yeah, a tincture you might call it.
Yes, an ultra-dilute amount.
Yes, okay.
And I think we provide a valuable service. And yes, there is always going to be shortages for cancer treatments, but we are looking at people who have tried everything in conventional medicine, and this is a safe and very, very cheap and can be effective treatment for this group of people.
Really interesting, Hugh. Thanks a lot for talking on the show today. Appreciate that.
Okay, no problem.
Cheers for your time. That's Dr. Hugh Nielsen. Let's also speak to Mike Marshall, who is from the Merseyside Skeptic Society, and they have their doubts about this. Hello to you, Mike.
Hi there, hi.
Just listening as you were there. If people want this stuff, why shouldn't the NHS pay for it?
Well, the simple fact is it doesn't work. It's very easy to say that there are studies here, there are studies there, but actually when you look at the quality of the studies, the best quality studies show there is absolutely no effect in homeopathy. And this is a case that there might be one or two doctors here and there might suggest that it does work, but the overwhelming majority of doctors will say it doesn't work. 1 in 1,000 might say it works. 999 would completely disagree. The medical establishment, the consensus absolutely is clear at this point that homeopathy is nothing ineffective sugar pills, placebo pills, you might say. The very best, most credible expert bodies completely agree. The British Medical Association, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee, every single one of these bodies have looked at the evidence and said, this doesn't work, we shouldn't be wasting £4-5 million a year on this.
Well,
that money could go to people.
If it's appeared in scientific journals that have been peer-reviewed, then there must be some backing to it.
Well, actually, when you look at the studies that suggest that it works, I mean, I think Dr. Hugh Nielsen cited one from 2014. The actual conclusion of the study he's citing said this doesn't show that there's a very strong effect. It says we need to examine this. More evidence is needed because this isn't conclusive. The very best studies, the ones that are done with double-blind, they don't tell anybody whether they're getting the homeopathy or the placebo. Those are the studies that show no effect at all. Once you start removing the blindings and doing studies that don't have quite as many people in and aren't quite as well conducted, you start to see artifacts appearing as if this works. But that's why we do studies in the best way possible. There simply isn't any evidence that this works at all.
But what about those who say, well, it worked for me? And there will be those who say that. I mean, not everybody has absolute faith in science, or at least they believe that there might be other things than science that might be at play. And we don't know everything, and we can't claim to, can we?
Well, absolutely, we don't know everything, but the best way we have of finding things out is by doing a proper study on it. I mean, they can have an individual person will really feel that it worked for them, but how do they know that they weren't going to get better anyway, or that it wasn't something else that they were doing? And that's really what a study is. That's really what science is. It's not something magical. It's not something where the scientists get in a room and decide what's true. It's just our way of finding out what is true and what isn't.
But, he said there, didn't he, that he mainly practices this where the science and the conventional medicine has failed. So it's not like you would be going, wouldn't be first-line treatment, would it? This would be something you try after conventional medicine had failed, and maybe it was the last chance saloon. It just might work. It's worth a try, isn't it?
Well, it's very easy to say that, but unfortunately, as I say, this is money that's coming out of the public purse. It's £5 million a year, and it's very easy to say this is a very small amount of money from the NHS.
0.004%.
But I mean, I don't want to be the one who looks at somebody who has had their treatment denied because of funding reasons and say, well, it's okay, we're only wasting a small amount. I mean, yes, this could have funded your treatment, but instead we're spending it on things we know at this point do not work. I think any amount of money spent on treatments that can be shown not to work should be something we should be very concerned about, and we should spend that money in places where they can legitimately help people.
On maynard.com.au. It's Bunga Bunga! Episode 21 with Tim Ferguson and Maynard. Ring the bell, do the thing. Tim Ferguson's right of reply to something that no one wanted to know and asked in the first place.
Don't expect too much.
Are you wondering, what do I think? It's very simple. You've got to engage with the Murdoch press. If you're not sure about your political stance, read any opinion page in any of the Murdoch periodicals.
Miranda Devine, is that one?
Miranda Devine, she's always of interest. Anything in The Australian, Janet Albrechtson, a very cogent writer, and also Henry Ergus, who's written something. It's so funny this morning. But you've got to have a look at this stuff. You have to watch Fox News. You have to embrace this stuff because...
Where's this going to get us if we do this?
Well, then you will know that whatever they're saying you don't agree with because you are rational, you're artistic, you're creative, you're thoughtful, you care about other people. So if you're not at all sure what you truly believe, tune into Murdoch. News.com has the opposite of what you are.
That's Tim Ferguson's right of reply, straight from the mouth. Bunga bunga, or as we like to say, bunga bunga.
Bunga bunga.
On maynard.com.au. Hey, you!
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. Posted February 18th, 2016 on ABC Net AU. Low vaccination rates caused by parental suspicion, says researcher. A researcher from the University of Sydney says suspicion, rather than neglect, is behind low vaccination rates on the New South Wales North Coast. A recent National Health Performance Authority report showed less than 47% of 5-year-olds living in the Mullumbimby area of the Shire were fully immunised. The rate was 50% for 2-year-olds and less than 54% for 1-year-old children in the postcode. The Australian Chief Medical Officer and all state and territory chief health officers agreed to a target of 95% of children to be fully immunised. PhD candidate Catherine Helps has interviewed parents in the Byron Shire who have refused to immunise their children. Ms. Helps said the situation in Byron was the result of a conscious decision-making by parents. Quote, "They're very vigilant around the well-being of their children and what goes into them," end quote, she said. Quote, "When they look at a product, like some of the vaccinations, they have concerns about the product, and they also have concerns about the transparency and the motivation of the people who are encouraging them very strongly to have that done. They're not sure that the motivation necessarily comes from the best intentions for their child. There is some concern about there being profit motive," end quote. Health authorities have warned that low vaccination rates could leave the region ripe for an outbreak of diseases, which have largely been eradicated in Australia. Dr. Vicky Shepherd from New South Wales Health said the deadly respiratory disease diphtheria was still common in parts of Asia and the Pacific. She said people entering Australia from those areas could carry the bacteria in on their skin. Quote, "It's probably only about 5 years ago that happened in Queensland when someone brought the bug back from overseas," end quote, Dr. Shepherd said. Quote, "They weren't affected themselves because they were vaccinated, but they were in contact with a young adult who had never been vaccinated and she died from diphtheria," end quote. Last year, the federal government announced that some welfare benefits would be denied to people who refused to immunise their children. Mullumbimby mother Heidi Robertson, who helped to form the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group in 2013, said she was hopeful the policy would eventually pay dividends. Quote, "We can only go on anecdotes that we've got from local immunisation providers, and there are lots and lots of phone calls coming in from parents finding out more information about the vaccinations and placing their kids onto these catch-up schedules," end quote, she said. Quote, "That's very promising," end quote. Ms. Robertson said friends of hers from other parts of Australia were reluctant to visit the region, which relies heavily on tourism. Quote, "They're absolutely astounded that less than 1 in 2 children are fully vaccinated here. They don't understand it," end quote, she said. Quote, "In fact, many of them say they wouldn't come for a holiday in this region because of that fact alone," end quote. The New South Wales Opposition's health spokesman, Walt Secord, said the vaccination rates recorded around Mullumbimby were usually associated with developing nations. Quote, "Now that is irresponsible in a country like Australia," end quote, he said. Quote, "People in Africa line up to vaccinate their children, but on the north coast of New South Wales, people are not doing it," end quote. The New South Wales Health Minister, Gillian Skinner, has so far declined to comment on the issue.
Hi, this is Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. We are a group of concerned citizens dedicated to promoting good science and common sense in our region, the far north coast of New South Wales. This area, famous for its natural beauty and relaxed lifestyle, also has the lowest rates of vaccination in Australia. We are out to change that by challenging the myths and misinformation and by providing good evidence-based information to the community. We'd love for you, no matter where you are in the world, to join our fight. Please visit our webpage at www.nrvs.info. We also have a link there to our Facebook page. Tweet us at NRVaxSupporters, that's VAX, and check us out on Wikipedia by searching for Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And thank you to Jo Alabaster and Michael Marshall and everybody else who helped me put this episode together. I think we're going to have to investigate this science channel from the Royal Institution of Australia a bit more. But before I go, a big thank you to those people who are helping the Skeptic Zone by buying merchandise from Mr. Cat's Origami Jewellery. There's a link at skepticzone.tv. All those proceeds help keep the Skeptic Zone on air. But for this week, from a secret location, which is a little bit echoey, I must say, this is Richard Saunders signing off. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.